Hi, everybody. Sorry we're a few minutes late getting started. I was having a few little technical difficulties, and this is one. As you can see, it keeps popping back and forth on me. I'm going to switch it over to the screen share, so we'll get to that right away. But I have 3 tips for you today. Again, welcome to Zoho's Tips and Tricks webinar. We do these every month. We have different tips every month. Starting next year, we're going to create quarterly themes. So each month, the tips will be all about a certain theme. And our first theme for the first quarter of 2016 will be reporting. So if you have an interest in reporting, you want to learn about reporting, I encourage you to tune in for those three monthly webinars, January, February, March. We'll have some great tips about reporting and Zoho's reports analytics. So today I have 3 kind of diverse tips for you. We're going to talk about a quick and easy one, a quick little tip for setting criteria when you're using a pick list as the field to set criteria. And so that's a quick little one that you might not have known about. So I want to share that with you. The second one is a little more involved, and that has to do with Zoho's workflow. So if you're interested in workflow, this would be a good one to look at. This is something relatively new that Zoho just came out with, and it has to do with using workflow to auto-convert a lead. So before they updated the system, to convert a lead, you always had to push the convert button in the lead house in the lead auto-convert workflow by doing something different in it. Today's example is going to be changing the status of a lead record. So just by changing the status of a lead record and saving it, we'll set up workflow that will auto-convert that lead record to an account, a contact, and an opportunity. And then lastly, it's a little trick I want to share with you for populating a lookup field on a web form. If you've ever created web forms, you might notice that when you're creating your web form, any lookup fields that you have are not available to you to put on the web form. So I'm going to just show you a little trick to kind of work around that. And the scenario that I'm going to use today is tying a campaign to a lead coming in off a web form. Okay, so those are my 3 tips today. And hopefully the technical difficulties do not plague me anymore. All right, let's get started. I'm going to switch over to screen share. Okay, so we are now into my my CRM account. And the first thing I want to do, let's knock that quick one off real quick, and that has to do with setting criteria for a pick list. So let's see. I'm going to use a view as a way of doing that. So let's go into create a view. So if you're not familiar with views are these drop-down lists that help you filter and define the content of your list of leads, or your list of with any module. So we'll just go ahead and create a new view. And I'm just going to call this demo view. I'm probably not even going to save it. If this is your first time seeing views, just to give you a quick overview, there's 3 different parts of defining a view. The first is to define what data you want to include in the view. So it's as easy as clicking. So now, if ever this happens, here's an extra tip for this month. If ever this happens where you're trying to select columns and it pops over like this and you lose your middle column, all you have to do is refresh your form. That's just a little browser-dependent thing that goes on sometimes within Zoho. So you see that pop right back up, and now I can add my fields. Nice little bonus trick there. So you can just click on these fields and click add, and that will add it as a column in your view. So that's the first step to creating a view, besides defining the name, which I lost when I refreshed, is to define what information you want to see in that view. The second thing is permissions. Who else can see this view? And I always say, if it's something really specific to what you're doing, then it's always good to just keep the view to yourself. If it's something that you think your coworkers could take advantage of, then you can allow all users, or you can allow only certain users, and that you control by clicking these radio buttons. So here's the crux of the tip, is the shortcut for setting criteria. So I'm going to choose my state pick list, if I can find it. Bear with me for a sec. Just looking for, I'm going to go ahead and use lead status. Won't be as an effective as an example because it's not a huge long list. So this is really a great little tip to use when you have a big long list, like countries. Like if you convert your country field to a select field, it would be more advantageous. But I'll go ahead and demonstrate this just so you see it. So I can just start typing in the field. So if I know, for example, if I know I just want this to be something with contacted, I can just start typing contacted, and it's going to limit my selections to those that fit the criteria that I typed. So you can see now I don't have the longer list, I have a shorter list, and I can just pick from that shorter list. So again, this is much more advantageous when you have a long pick list like states or countries or something like that. And it's especially useful when you're setting up something like territories where you're adding a bunch of states to a to a criteria field. Then you can just type in, if you're looking for Alabama, you type in A. You're looking for Pennsylvania, type in P, and those that will quickly shorten the list to be able to instead of scrolling back down and down. So that's my little tip. And again, for something like this, it's, you can see the whole list, so it's not a big deal. You can choose them, but for a longer list, it comes in really handy. Okay, so that is number one for today. A little shortcut for setting criteria for a pick list. And again, this, this criteria window pops up a lot. It pops up in views, it pops up in reports, it pops up in excuse me, a lot of other places where you're defining filters for the records. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. So that's our short one for today. The next two I have are kind of involved, so hang in for the long haul. Okay, so the first one, let's see, which one do I want to do next? I think I will do the workflow to auto convert leads. Let's do that one. So let's see. So first one to start with, we're going to go into setup and we're going to set up our workflow. So I'm in setup now, and I'm going to go to this automation workflow, and I'm going to create a new rule. So again, our scenario here is when I change lead status to a certain status, I want to just auto convert my leads. So this rule has to do with leads. I'm going to call this auto convert. Always a good rule of thumb to give a nice description to your rules, especially if you have a lot of workflow rules, because sometimes we forget, why did I set up that rule? And you can't tell by the name. So it's always good to have a good description. I'm going to skip that step today, but I encourage you to create good descriptions. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is set up the trigger, and that's going to be a record action. And we're going to have that set to field update. And we're going to choose the lead status. Okay. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to leave that selected, execute the rule, and any selected field is updated because obviously I only have one. You can choose to choose up to 3 fields and specify that all 3 of them have to be updated in an editing event in order to trigger a workflow. But again, for this example, we're just doing lead status. So I'm going to say next. And I'm not going to set any criteria for this example. Here's another area where that criteria pops up. But for this particular example, I don't need to set, actually, I'm sorry, I do need to set criteria. I need to say that I want the lead status to equal the certain status that we want to have in order to convert the lead. Sorry about that. My technical difficulties have gotten all discombobulated this morning. So we're going to choose lead status. And I want to say that when that lead status field is updated, and I have updated it to pre-qualified. And again, this is just my example. You can use any one of these, anything that fits your scenario. For this example, I'm going to choose pre-qualified. So when I have a lead record that comes in and the status field gets updated to pre-qualified, I want to auto-convert the lead. Okay, so now you see I have this convert option here. This is something new. And if you are at professional level or below, you will not see the custom function in your list of possible actions. Custom functions are only available for enterprise and above, but I believe convert is available for the lower editions. So, so I want to create a conversion event, and you can edit your conversion mapping here, and what that means is that that defines how the data will flow from the lead record into the account contact and potential record. Generally, that's something that you set up when you first set up your system, and that's good to go, but they did give that link here in case you wanted to look at it or check it. It's just convenient to have that link there and be able to go look at the conversion mapping. So I want to create a count and a contact, and I want to create a potential. Now this, sometimes this doesn't quite work out well to auto create the potential, because if you have you know, a pretty diverse set of leads that could be anywhere from, you know, $1,000 project to a $20,000 project, it might be tough to initially set up a dollar value. You can choose the annual revenue field or another field in your lead record to any kind of currency field to have that pull from the record, which is a nice feature. So right now, the only currency field I have in the lead record is annual revenue, which is why that's coming up. But if I could create another record that would say potential value or something like that, so that I could then handle that situation where I'm going to have a vastly different amounts for the various leads. So I can go ahead and just pick that annual revenue, and then you can see what that looks like. That's just going to be a merge field, and it's going to be pulled in from the record. I can set the potential name. I can, oops, excuse me. So again, that's going to be pulled in from the record. I can just set it to the company name dash new potential. Or I can just type in something there, but it's good to have it tied to the company name. Closing date. Just, you can, best thing to do here is choose, I mean, it's, you know, it's hard to choose a specific date for this particular example. So it's best to do an execution day plus so many days. So, you know, maybe give yourself 3 weeks to close a particular potential, or, you know, again, whatever your business model, whatever makes sense for your business model. And then we can have, you know, set a stage, how they start. You can select a campaign source and set a contact role for this as well. So it's basically just, you know, if you've ever converted a lead, you know, this looks very familiar. This is how you go through and set up lead conversion. So I'm going to go ahead and say done and save. And that's all I have to do. Now, anytime that I have a lead record and I change the lead status to pre-qualified, again, in this particular example, you can make that trigger anything that you want. The only thing it has to be is a field update. If you choose another, if you go in when you're setting up your rule and you choose some other like create or edit, that convert option won't show up. It has to be a field update. So you can, again, you can make that on any field update, set this up any way you want it, and anytime that criteria is met, that trigger occurs, your lead will auto-convert. Okay, that is tip number 2 for today. And let's move on to the most involved one, which is tip number 3. And this has to do with, again, being able to place a, we're going to go into the web form. Being able to place or tie a lookup field in to a lead that gets created from a web form. And a great example of this is, say you're running a campaign. Maybe it's an email marketing campaign. And maybe it's an email marketing campaign and you're trying to drive people to your website. And you want to know that if that person came in from that that email market or that that particular campaign, you want that lead record denoted or linked to that campaign somehow, so that you can track how many leads you got from that campaign and measure your ROI for that campaign. So again, if you're just building web form, you can't. There is no option to drag a campaign lookup field onto the web form. So we have this little trick to get around that. So let me show you that. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to create a web form. I'm just going to start with a new one. And we're just going to make it super simple. First name, last name, company, email, and phone. So the trick here is I want to tie this to a campaign. So I do have a campaign lookup field on my lead record, but notice it's not coming up here in my list of fields. I did create this basically a single line text field called campaign text ID, and I'm going to drag that onto my form. Now let me I'm going to open another CRM window here. Okay, so what I want to show you is, so I set up this demo campaign, and this is the campaign that I want my lead records coming in off this particular lead form to be tied into. So what I need to get for this example is I need to get ID of this campaign record. How I do that is I select the campaign record, I go up into my URL, and here's where I find the ID. It's right up here. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to come back into my form that I'm creating. And now what I want to do is set this field to that campaign ID. And I don't want that obviously showing up on my form, because that's not going to look good to my visitor. So I want to make this a hidden field on the form, and I'm going to just paste in the ID onto that hidden field. So now I've got my nice simple form, first name, last name, company, email, phone, and I've got this hidden field on there that's my campaign text ID. So any person that fills out this form, that's once I put it out on my website, when that lead gets created and comes into my system, this is going to be part of that record, and I can use that to trigger workflow to then connect that to the actual campaign. So that's what we're going to step through. Okay, so here's my web form. For those of you who have never seen web forms, as you can see, it's a pretty easy drag and drop interface to get the fields that you want to have. I just want to point out there are 2 advanced tools on the web form. You can do a file upload, or you can add a CAPTCHA. Highly recommend adding CAPTCHA to any form that you create. I'm not going to do it for this because it's not going to live out there on the web, but you find that there are those annoying little cyber bots out there that will just look for submit buttons to push that they can push without having to enter CAPTCHA, and then you get all these blank forms. It's really annoying. So highly recommend taking advantage of the built-in CAPTCHA and using that. They have some styling that you can do on your form, so I can change my font color, my font size, I'm sorry, my font size, my color, my fill, my alignment. So right now it's left aligned. I could right align or top align, so you can, set your form up the way you like it. I can also change the width. Minimum width is 600 pixels. Okay, so that's so now I've got my basic form with my hidden campaign text ID. Next step is I'm going to give the form a name. So I'll call this my demo form. And the landing page URL, where this is turning into more web form lesson, is basically where you want your visitor to land on your website after they've filled out your form. For this particular example, I'm just going to have it land right back on the form. But a good practice is to have it land on like a thank you page saying, thank you for thank you for submitting the form. It's we'll be in touch with you shortly or something along those lines. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up to go back. To go back right onto my form. Okay. And then form location, you can put a specific URL for that, or you can just use an asterisk, and then you can put the form anywhere and in multiple places. If you do use a URL, you have to make sure that it is where the form is located, because if it's not, the form will not submit it properly. So it's always actually good practice to just use the asterisk, and then you don't run into that situation. The rest part of this form, I'm just going to flow through. You can, you can do an assignment, notify, all this other stuff, but that's not really pertinent to our example. So I'm going to gloss over that. And now I have my code, and I just copy this code onto my website and pop the form up there. So that's how to embed a web form. So let me see. Okay. This one does not have the campaign text, so let me just put that up real quick. Just bear with me for a second. Let's see. All right, so I'm just reloading that new field that I added that I showed you. So I'm just going to update that. So now when I fill out this form, let's use one of my many email addresses. And I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And it just comes back right in on my form. So now we go to leads. And here is the lead that was submitted. And if we look into that lead, we'll see I had that campaign text ID in that form. Okay, great. So now how do I make that campaign text ID populate that campaign? What I want to have happen ultimately is for the campaign lookup field to get populated with the right campaign. So to do that, I need to do a custom function. So now I have my record in, and like I said, I have the campaign text ID. So let's now go into setup, workflow, and I'm going to write a custom function that will, see, I didn't have it already. So I'm going to configure a custom function that will take that campaign text ID and write that into the actual, well, I'll show you, it's just easier to show than to explain. So I'm just going to call this populate campaign lookup. I want to associate that to leads. And again, as with rules, always good for custom functions to add a good description, because again, then you can go back and remember what the intention was for that custom function. Okay, and all I really need to get as far as an argument, yeah, is the ID of the lead record. So I just want to bring that lead ID in. And I could, to make things easier, I can also bring the campaign ID in. And that is going to be the campaign text ID. Okay? So those are really the only two pieces of information I need to come in as arguments into this function. Okay, so now all I need to do is I need to update the lead record by setting the campaign lookup field with this ID field. So in order to do that, this is turning into a custom function lesson, which is a little bonus again. In order to do that, I'm going to use call functions. So I'm going to drag call function onto here. I'm going to choose integration task. I'm going to choose Zoho CRM. And the function that I want is update record. Okay, so here I'm updating records in the lead module. The ID I will use is my input ID. So a couple more bonus tips here is, in order to specify that ID correctly, the first thing I need to do is say that it's an input. Then I need to use the name. And notice that when I bring in the lead ID, it comes in as an integer into my custom function. The update record function needs it as a string, so I need to convert to a string. This is crucial to making sure this works, so take a note of that. And then I need to, this values as map is where I define what's getting written into the record. So I'm going to pop this link. This is a handy link to have here, because then you don't have to know the proper syntax to write in here. So this is always good to use. So I'm going to open that up. And now the key that I want to populate is my campaign lookup ID. And that field is named that. And then my value is going to be my campaign ID. So again, I need to say that that's an input and just the name. And that's already a string, so I don't have to do anything about converting that. And that's all I have to do. So I'm basically writing that campaign ID into my campaign ID lookup field. And then I'm done. And then I just have to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it updated lead. And that's my response. And that's it. It's a one-line custom function to take that text field and write that into the campaign code. So now I want to test this to make sure that I did everything correctly. So I'm going to go back over to this other window that I opened up where I had the campaign, and I want to go to my lead record. And then let me grab this ID first. Okay. So the other piece of custom function is, now I can just do a save and execute right here, and that's a great little way of testing to make sure that everything works correctly. So now I'm going to paste in the lead ID. Now I have to go back to that record and get my campaign ID, which is right here. Okay, now I'm just going to paste in that campaign ID, and I'm going to submit. It says it worked. So let's go check and see that lead record. And it did. So now you see that I have that link is now established. So now it is officially linked to the demo campaign that I created. And if I go to that demo campaign, I will see this lead from web campaigns connected. Okay. So that's it. I know it was kind of long. Some bonus tips along the way. But bonus tips are always good, right? So, okay, well, that is, I'm trying to get back to my window here. So that is the 3 tips that I have for you today. Hopefully you found them useful. This is a longer tips and tricks. Usually my these webinars are quick ones, like 10 to 15 minutes. This was a longer one, a lot involved. So I hope you found them useful. So again, quick little tip on setting the criteria for a long pick list. Again, really useful if you have like a select country or a select state pick list that you created that has, you know, big long list of different options to choose from. It's just if you know that, you know, if you have a list of options that you want to choose in front of you, it's so much easier to just start typing something and have that list be really shrunk down to those that are matching your criteria. So that was tip number 1. Tip number 2 was a recently new addition to the workflow actions is auto convert. So again, trick there is in order to auto convert something, it has to be tied to a field update trigger. So you create your rule, you set it to be a field update, and then you can choose convert and set your convert parameters and automatically convert your leads. By the way, that also works for quotes as well. You can auto convert a quote to an invoice or a sales order using that same technique. And then lastly, our long example, and that was showing how we can connect leads coming in off a web form to a campaign in our system just by hiding the campaign code on the form and then using a custom function to write that into the lookup field ID for that. Okay, so hopefully you found these useful. Thanks for tuning in. And let me just check to see if there's any questions. No. As always, during the live events, oh, here I go, flashing back and forth again. As always, during the live events, there is a question and answer panel that is available to you, so you can ask questions while we're streaming live. Obviously, once it's recorded, and if you're watching this recorded, that's not available to you. But please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. You can contact us through our website, www.marksgroup.net. All right, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you found these helpful, and tune in December for 3 more tips and tricks for Zoho CRM use. All right, thanks. Have a great day, and happy Thanksgiving.